in the modern world, the subject of menstruation is a bit taboo. And even though we're kind of coming out of that, it's still a complete interruption. And, dealing with tampons, maxi pads, cramping, mood fluctuations, these are things that we just want to avoid or hurry through as women. And some women have extremely challenging menstrual cycles. If you have endometriosis, PMDD, PCOS, hormonal problems, then it's actually a huge issue. And for myself, I've been diagnosed with endometriosis. I got diagnosed when I was a teenager, and with these extra conditions, you can be dealing with digestive problems and cysts and swelling and fiery tearing sensations that don't go away with just Tylenol or ibuprofen or something like that. So in spiritual development, however, we're invited to make use of seemingly uncomfortable and challenging and painful situations and use those things as catalysts for our growth. And if this resonates with you and you're a woman, I would invite you to look at your menstrual cycle as one of those catalysts. Menstrual cycles contain a lot of natural magic. So they're magical in the way that they are on average 28 days, and the moon cycle is 28 days. We get a full moon every 4 weeks. Some women find that if they live close to nature and follow a very natural lifestyle, their menstrual cycle will sync up with the moon and they will start bleeding on or around the full moon. And that just is kind of cool. It reminds us that our body is very connected to the earth and to the universe. Alongside the discomfort and interruption, women often complain of a high sensitivity. It can drive our families crazy. It can drive us crazy. It can be an assault on our self-esteem. It can make us feel out of control of our emotions. And this is actually more pronounced when we choose to plow through this part of the month without changing up our routine at all. If we work just as hard, if we pound it out at the gym without changing that routine, if we continue with our social commitments without putting a pause on them. So my life dramatically changed when I surrendered to creating some space for this intense time. And in return, the time became less intense. With silence, increased isolation, slowing of activity, insights had a chance to emerge. So I started to build a container. Around this part of the month. For me, it's about a week before the full moon, leading up to the full moon. And I saw that my mood and my sensitivity fluctuations were still in existence, but they didn't have so much to contend with. They didn't have all the stimulation of the people and the commitments to be triggered by. So even though it was just as intense, I could now have some space in that container to reflect and journal about what was coming up. I could contemplate in that silent place, oh wow, like I feel really small in this area of my life. I don't like how that feels. Oh, that's interesting, because if I was in like this total plowing through, I wouldn't have time to notice how these fluctuations actually contained information. So instead of sitting there and doing absolutely nothing, it became, just more baths, more pauses, more tea, more essential oils, more soft music or complete silence, just creating some personal ritual throughout the day. It's not like I completely stop working and I don't do anything, but there's a lot more that gets removed. I'll even do things like do all my grocery shopping, stock up the kitchen before that week comes. I'll make sure I haven't planned any appointments during that week. And if someone wants me to commit to something, I'll tell them let me just think about that. And so the pain does continue to surface. It's not like the pain's going to go away. But now there's space to get curious about what mental pain or old memories might be connected to these waves of pain physically that are passing through the body. We shed the blood, but at the same time, if we're aware, we're also able to shed ideas and old ways of seeing ourselves or the world that are outdated and that are not serving us any longer. But how can we find these things if we're racing around? If we look at one cycle, it's 28 days, 4 weeks, we can apply it to the macro. We can apply it to the 4 seasons of the year. So that would make our menstrual cycle the winter. And in the winter, we hibernate. We're more still. There's more silence. There's a chance for more reflection on the previous 3 seasons. So once the winter is over and we're complete with the menstrual cycle, often there is actually a big rush of energy, kind of like the spring, where we get a lot of ideas and there's a lot of life and there's kind of like a resurrection, a coming back. So thinking of it in the way of seasons is really helpful. When working with energy, something to consider is quitting tampons. I noticed that when I quit tampons, there was a more natural flow of energy. So we have a downward flow of energy, a downward purging when we're bleeding. And when we have a tampon, it completely blocks that. So what you're trying to get rid of actually comes to a full stop, and there's a lot of energy there. And that energy has nowhere to go. And it can try and bounce back up, and for me, can increase problems with cramping. And so I ended up switching to cloth pads, which is a little bit more, not quite as convenient, I would say, but on an energetic level and on a pain level, it brought my body into a little bit more of a natural flow. Another thing that's interesting is that, many religions or old traditions suggest that women are to be avoided and to stay out of men's way, or men should stay out of their way until menstruation is complete. And they say things like, until a woman is clean, until a woman is purified. And I think these old texts have something to them, but they've been a bit misconstrued to make women sound like they're dirty or impure. Really, women have a special ability to absorb energy from the field around them. And this is a special gift, especially if a woman is highly sensitive or empathic. They can feel into what energies are present, and then they can know how to respond, hopefully in a nurturing, supportive, understanding way. But we can also absorb negativity. And when it comes to bleeding time, it is a purge of what we've absorbed during that month. It's a physical purge where the lining of the uterus sheds that current lining, and that's the blood that comes out. But with our emotional state, we're also purging out energy that we have picked up along the way. And so in that way, it makes us very powerful because there's very strong energies moving through. So a woman will feel powerful emotions being purged. It's a cleansing, not because she's dirty, but because she's a dynamic system that is cleaning the energy field around her all the time. And it makes sense for her to be avoided so that she can do this powerful synthesis. Yeah, so those are some of my thoughts about the menstrual cycle. Some people also call it the moon cycle. I like to call it moon time or moon cycle. And women, if you have any comments or any ideas that have worked for you as far as creating a container or ritual around your menstrual cycle in order for it to catalyze growth and wellness, drop them in the comments so that we can read them.